Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name's Amy, and I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the Niv, and we are in chapter 7 of Nehemiah. We are going to do the whole chapter. It is quite long. We find out how Nehemiah responds to this new internal threat of people feeding Tobiah information for him to come back and send hate back. So, because he's got people on the inside, people who are actually in choosing to work with Tobiah or working against God in some fashion. It's quite interesting. And then we go into a list of exiles that returned. Nehemiah's list of exiles that returned. I am going to just preemptively say that I am not going to stop and spell all of these names because it's a lot of names. And I do fully encourage you, as I said at the end of the previous video, to open up a list. Open up the Bible and look at the list and how the names are spelled. If you feel like I'm spelling it, saying them wrong, I probably am. And feel free to verify anything that sounds wrong. Because I am in the process, that's why I sound them out myself. Still learning how each of them are to be said. After the wall, chapter 7, verse 1. After the wall had been rebuilt, I had set the doors in place. The gatekeepers and the singers and the Levites were appointed. Okay. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother, Hanani, okay, along with, this footnote of B, or the brother's name, Hanani, comma, that is, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel. Okay? So very similar. The difference is an AH at the end. Because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most men do. I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. Well, the gatekeepers are still on duty. Have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some at their posts and some near their houses. So, create a secure perimeter. We now have walls. We're going to have guard duty. And that's precisely what walls gives you an advantage of, because you can see what's coming and you're not caught unawares. You have time to prepare. The list of exiles who returned. Now, the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it. The houses had not yet been rebuilt. So my God put it into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been first to return. This is what I found written there. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town, in the company of Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Raamiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispereth, Bigaviah, Nehum, and Bananah. This, the list of the men of Israel, the descendants of Parosh, 2,172, of Shephatiah, 372, of Arah, 652, of Pa'ath Moab, through the line of Jeshua and Joab, 2,818, of Elam, 1,254, of Zatu, 845, of Zechariah, 760, of Binu, 648, of Bebiah, 628, of Azgad, 2,322, of Adonikem, 667, of Bigvaiah, 2,067, of Adin, 655, of Ater, through Hezekiah, 98, of Hashem, 328, of Beziah, 324, of Harif, 112, of Gibeon, 95. The men of Bethlehem and Nephotah, 188, of Anatoth, 128. Of Beth Hazmaveth, 42. Of Kiriath Jearim and Kiriath and Beeroth, 743. Of Ramah and Geba, 628. Of Michmash, 122. Of Bethel and Ai, 123. Of other Nebo, 52. Of other Elam, 1,254. Of Harim, 320. Of Jericho, 345. Of Lod, Hadid, and Onu, 721. Of Sana'a, 3,930. The priests, the descendants of Jedediah, through the family of Jeshua, 973. Of Immer, 1,052. Of Pashur, 1,247. Of Harim, 1,017. The Levites, the descendants of Jeshua, through Kadmiel, through the line of Hovadiah, 74. The singers, the descendants of Asaph, 148. The gatekeepers, the descendants of Shalom, Ater, Talmon, Akub, Hadatiah, Shobiah, 138. The temple servants, the descendants of Ziha, Hashpua, Taboth, Kiros, Sia, Padan, Labanana, Hagabah, Shelmiah, Hanan, Gedel, Gahar, Reahiah, Rezin, Nekadoah, Gazaam, Uzzah, Paseah, Besiah, Minunam, Nephisim, Bakbuk, Hakfua, Harhu, Bazaluth, Mehida, Harsha, Barkos, Sisera, Tima, Neziah, Hatifa, and the descendants of the servants of Solomon, the descendants of Sotiah, Sophirith, Peardiah, Jaala, Darkon, Gedel, Shephatiah, Hatil, Pokarath, Hazelbaim, Ammon, and the temple servants and the descendants of the servants of Solomon, 392. So that's all those people, because there's no number in between the temple servants, the descendants of the servants of Solomon, and the temple servants and the descendants. So it just puts them all together, 392. The following came up from the towns of Tel Malah, Tel Harshar, Karub, Adon, Immer, but could not show their families were descendants from Israel, the descendants of Delilah, Tobiah, and Nicodoah, 642. Okay, and from among the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, Hakoz, Berileziah, a man who had married a daughter of Berileziah, the Gileadite, and was called by that name. These searched for their family records, but they could not be found. They could not find them, so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor, therefore, ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food, and there could be a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim. Now, just hang on one second. Okay, so we paused because a lot of people are like, why does this matter? This stuff matters because in this culture, you had to prove you were of these people, and you just decided where you lived, what job you could have, whether or not, like, these people were excluded because they couldn't prove their genealogy. You could only be a priest if you were of this line. Now, also, there's the Urim and the Thummim. Okay, so they looked rather similar to this. Usually they're not necessarily black. This is obsidian. Obviously I've stuck them on pendants. Okay, but it would have been engraved in the stone, and this is engraved. It's just not very deep. Upward triangle, like for fire, right? This is I believe it's the Urim, the light and the truth. truth and perfection. Curse, bless. This is, the light of truth when you put them together. Okay? And curse, if you put them together, what you get is the Hebrew word, because you get the Star of David with the two triangles put together. The word of God is the light of truth. It's like, woohoo, yay, Bible study. Okay, so, but they also use this as a form of deciding things. Yes and no, like to curse or to bless. To curse or to heal, fire or water, to destroy or to purify. Which one is it? Which people are these people? So it would be yes or no. Are these people even of Israel? Yes, to bless? No, to curse. Because remember, to the Jewish people, the best thing in the world is to be a Jewish person. So there we are. Because it means you're God's people, and the best thing in the world is to be one of God's people. It's just, as Christians, we feel that it extends beyond us, beyond just our group, because it's the way it's supposed to be. Everybody who sees the light of the Lord can be accepted. So in this culture, though, that's not really how it works. So they have their own devices. Now, it's also BC era culture. So let's just... All BC era cultures have their way of communicating with their deity, and this is no exception for this one. Okay. Verse 66. The whole company numbered 42,360. Besides their 7,377 men servants and maid servants, they also had 245 men and women singers. There were 736 horses, 245 mules. I got the footnote of A. Some Hebrew manuscripts. See Ezra chapter 2, verse 66. Most Hebrew manuscripts does not have this verse. Okay. So nothing about horses and mules in some of the verses. 435 camels and 6,720 donkeys, because that's a separate verse. So the camels and the donkeys are acknowledged in other texts. Some of the heads of families contributed to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 drachmas, got a footnote of B. That is about 19 pounds or 8.5 kilograms, so it's a lot, of gold, 50 bulls, and 530 garments for priests. Some of the heads of families gave to the treasury for the work 20,000 drachmas, that is about 375 pounds or 170 kilograms, which also comes up in another verse, of gold, 220 minas, which is of course got a footnote, that is about 1 1/3 tons or 1.2 metric tons of silver. The total given by the rest of the people was 20,000 drachmas of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and that's got a footnote of E. That is about 1 1/4 tons or about 1.1 metric tons of silver, and 67 garments for priests. The priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, and the temple servants, along with certain people and the rest of the Israelites, settled into their own towns. So they took a census, got their donations in order, and moved the people about to where they should be for long-term stay. So, humming right along to being a set-up community. If you want to, oh look, you wouldn't know because you can't see what I'm reading. The next video, we have the entrance of the prophet Ezra into the book of Nehemiah. So we have a crossover of prophets. If you want to see the crossover, or if you want me to hear me read you about the crossover, you need to come back for the next video, friends. Hello, friends. Bible study, the Niv, Romans. We are doing verse 13, chapter 11, verse 13 through 36. So picking up where we left off. Again, letter from Paul to people who are faithful. I am talking to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an apostle to the Gentiles. I make much of my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. For if their rejection is reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the part of the dough offered as the first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not boast over these branches. If you do, consider this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant. Do not be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you will also be cut off. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut off of an olive tree that is wild by nature, and contrary to that nature, were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily were these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Now he's in that the wild ones, versus the cultivated ones. The wild ones would be the Gentiles. The cultivated ones would be the Jewish people. All of Israel will be saved. Verse 25. I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced an hardening in part until the full number of Gentiles has come in. And so all of Israel will be saved, as it is written. The deliverer will come from Zion and will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on the account of the patriarchs. For God's gift and his call are irrevocable. Just as you who are at one time disobedient to God now receive mercy as a result of their disobedience, so they too now have become disobedient in order that they may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you. For God has bound all men over to disobedience, so that he may have mercy on them all. If you don't ever sin, you can't ever heal your wounds, is essentially what this is. You have to sin in order to be forgiven for sin. Like, how can you be forgiven for something that you haven't even done? Remember that you're changing your soul's vibration to be in the vibration of heaven. You're not changing heaven to be what your lustily, worldly desires heaven version might be. You don't have a body there, so you don't have a need of any of those things. You won't even think about those things because you won't have a body. Doxicology, this one is called. Verse 33. O depths of the riches of wisdom and the knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments and his path beyond tracing out. Who knows the mind of the Lord? Or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? Like, what do you have that God needs, that he owes you, that he has to obey what you say because of your isms? For from him, God, and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. No matter how amazing any human being on earth is, they will never be more amazing than the Trinity. So you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's my advice. He wants us to be humble today. And remember that he told us to love one another and be kind. So all of your actions are supposed to be consistent with that behavior, and your intention in your heart is supposed to be too. And if you're so full of your own ego that you don't care how you treat someone else, then you're not in the love vibration. And you need to go find out where that trauma is so you can be a better person. Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name is Amy. I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the Niv, and we will be through 2025. We are in Psalms, Book 1, Psalm 31, which we started yesterday, but it's a very long psalm. It has 24 verses, which I know is like, yeah, but that's like a chapter. Yeah, but Psalms, they're meant to be felt. They're poems. This, for the director of music, is a Psalm of David. Now, you can find verses 1 through 8 in a previous video. In this video, we're going to do verses 9 through 18. And then you're just going to have to come back tomorrow if you want to hear how it is. So, be merciful to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and my body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish, and my years by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction. My bones grow weak because of all my enemies. I am the utter contempt of my neighbors. I am a dread to my friends. Those who see me on the street flee from me. I am forgotten by them as though I were dead. I have become like broken pottery. For I hear the slander of many. There is terror on every side. They conspire against me and plot to take my life. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from my enemies and from those who pursue me. Let your face shine upon your servant. Save me in your unfailing love. Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I have cried out to you. But let the wicked be put to shame and lie silent in the grave. Let their lying lips be silenced, for with pride and contempt they speak arrogantly against the righteous.